episode of Power Move Makers. This series was created with a simple goal in mind, to bring to the table high-level executives, successful entrepreneurs, and just all-around inspiring human beings. Not just focusing on their success, but really shining a light on the road they traveled to get there. Now, this week's guest, I'm so honored to have her on our show. And I'm going to do something I don't normally do because you wear so many freaking hats. And I don't want to get it wrong. So she's a host, a personality, a DJ, an author, a journalist, a poet, an actor, a podcaster. But I think they can all be encapsulated under one title, which it just comes with the territory when you do it well. She's a comedian. Please welcome to this week's Power Move Makers show, Miss Amanda Seales. Amanda, what up, girl?
What up, Prez? What's good?
How you been?
I'm good, man. I like everybody else, we're just figuring out this new normal. I think a lot of us thought like, I just need to figure it out for a little bit. And now it's sunk in that like, oh, I just need to ride this out. And when it's done, then we adjust.
Got you. I mean, I think we're all going through it. You and I were talking offline, and this has not been an easy journey. The world has changed. Obviously, we all know it, but we're trying to adjust. You know, as I was researching, I've been knowing you for many years. I had the opportunity to watch your career, watch you blossom. And it's, you know, for a person like me, I'm always so proud of watching others excel at their craft. And as I was doing my research on you, there's things that I know about you, there's things that I've watched you do, but there was other things that just kind of came to light that caught me off guard. So I want to take it back to the beginning because I've really, and I don't use this terminology loosely, you're a Renaissance woman. You kind of do it all.
You.
Like you really, really do, and you do it well. It's not like you're half-assing it. It's not like you're doing it 50%. You do a lot of things and you do them well. But let's go back to the beginning for a second. Something I didn't know. I know you from New York City, doing your thing, really coming up in your career. But you're originally from California, Inglewood. Did I get that correct?
Mm-hmm. I'm originally from LA. I left LA when I was 8, and then I grew up in Orlando from 8 to 18, and then I came to New York for school. And that was when, I always say, like, in Orlando, hip hop was just music, but it wasn't until I got to New York that it was like, oh, this is a culture. Like that, and my school, I went to SUNY Purchase, and I just remember like my first day on campus, everybody was like in ciphers and all type of shit. And I was like, yo, this is crazy. And like folks had turntable setups in their dorm rooms. And before I knew it, I was just like fully immersed. And I used my Columbia House membership for my first like 13 CDs. Like, because in Orlando, it was like, I could tell you all about Cash Money. I could tell you all about No Limit. But it wasn't until I got to New York that it was like, oh no, how you don't know about the Woo? How you don't know about like boot camp click? How you don't know? You know, and it was like I got a crash course, and then that really set me on my way in New York with how we came to know each other in the music industry, just as like a host on Sirius Satellite Radio, and then I was doing music and I was hosting stuff for MTV and VH1 and all these things, and but I did start my birth in LA, which a lot of people don't know. Even Issa Rae. Issa was like, I heard you talking shit about LA, and you can't talk shit about LA because you ain't from here. And I was like, actually. And she was like, what? I was like, yeah, exactly. So yeah.
I don't think many people know that. It caught me off guard as I was researching. I was like, really? I was like, man, it's from LA.
Because I have this type of energy where you don't know, like New York cats is New York cats. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm from New York. Atlanta is like the same way. New Orleans, like I feel like I didn't spend like Orlando is not one of those places. No one's out here like, oh, town, you know, like you just ain't repping Orlando like that. So, I mean, I grew up in Florida, but then also like my mother's from Grenada. So I grew up in a Caribbean household, which is a different type of energy too. So I think for me, it's like I had a lot of different vibes going on. But if I keep it a buck, even though I was born in LA and I was raised in Orlando and my mother's from Grenada, I have always been a New Yorker from birth.
Wow, wow. Okay, you went to SUNY Purchase. What'd you major in?
So originally I went to SUNY Purchase as an actor in the acting conservatory. And then at the end of my freshman year, there was like a whole fracas and they asked me to take a year off and come back. And during that year off, I realized that I didn't want to come back because I didn't even like the program and how they had treated me. And then I found out that I could create my own major. So I invented, they didn't have a Black Studies major at the time. So I created a curriculum around a Black Studies major. And then I had a visual in the, I had a concentration in the visual and performing arts. So that way I could keep all my credits that I had already accrued from freshman year. So that was my major. And then I went to Columbia for grad school in African American studies with a concentration in hip hop.
Got you. Okay, so you went to an Ivy League for your master's.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know you as the world does from entertainment, but you obviously have a brain in your head. Very educated, Ivy League educated to be exact. Why not stick in the world of academia? Was the arts in just being a creative always a part of your life?
Yeah. I mean, my first job was dancing at Disney when I was 8. Like that was my first job, like dancing in the Sparkling Christmas Spectacular when I was 8. And then from there, I was on My Brother and Me on Nickelodeon.
Yep.
And that was like the first Black sitcom. And I went to a performing arts high school. And then, like I said, I went to a performing arts college. And so the arts, and my mom is like really into the arts, like really into the arts. Like I was always like, you know, if she would save up so that I could go to see the Nutcracker at the end of the year, you know, and she was always buying records and magazines, and, you know, pop culture was something that was just kind of always top of mind in my house, and always presented as like valuable. Like there's pop, but then there's like the cultural pop culture. So even though there was like, you know, like Whitney Houston, for all intents and purposes, was a pop star, right? But my mom would present Whitney Houston to me as more than just a pop star, right? Like this is this Black woman, like look what she's singing about, look at the barriers that she's breaking down, you know? So I always had a reverence for Black pop culture. And so as an academic, I always understood that my academia only enhanced my creative space, and that pop culture for Black folks particularly it needs that connectivity to academia. Like the fact, like I really feel like right now we're very, very disconnected from intellectualism in our pop culture as Black folks. Like it just doesn't feel like it's as prevalent, and maybe I'm romanticizing, but it just feels like it's not as prominent. And I would love to be, you know, one of those people who, you know, when I'm gone, they say like, oh, Amanda Seales really made it her business to like keep intellectualism like as a mainstay in Black popular culture, and makes being smart cool.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. I wasn't going to go down this road with you, but you bring up such an interesting point. I often hear you speak about your mom. Whenever you do interviews, whenever I hear you speaking, your mom is somewhere in the conversation. Can you speak to the importance? Because there's a parent out there right now. You come from a West Indian descent. West Indians typically, they are, you know, they're known for having 14 jobs, but more important, they don't necessarily support going outside of what's the lawyer and the accountant, you know, and going into the arts. Can you speak to somebody out there who, you know, they might be a first-time parent, whether West Indian or not, how important it is to support your children and how it made that much of an impact in your career?
You know, so often we put our own fears and limitations on other people as well as on our kids. And I think for a lot of parents, they know that making it in the arts is a difficult thing to do. It's not as structured in terms of 9 to 5s, and it feels like it's just willy-nilly. And so in the best of interests, I think a lot of parents want their kid to have something stable, and the arts feels like an unstable field. And then there's also the level of rejection that you take in the arts, right? And so like, I think a lot of parents fear their kids having to deal with that level of rejection and disappointment. But ultimately, what I think a lot of folks don't do is they don't pay attention to what their kids are passionate about. They look at it as hobbies or as like little dalliances. And like, I do now for a living everything I was doing as an 8-year-old. Like, as an 8-year-old, I was drawing, I was writing all types of stories and all types of like little plays. And yeah, I mean, I was just like trying, you know, from 8 to 12, I was exploring all different types of stuff that I use to this day. And my mom was like, you know, buying me like, you know, African-American studies trivia cards and, you know, the books. Like, I was always surrounded by books, always. And anything I had interest in, my mom would at least nurture it enough for me to decide if I actually liked it or not. And I think a lot of parents just don't do that, and they don't see the value in it. And like, if the kid isn't like immediately, you know, adjusting or attracted to it, they give up. And it's like, you have to have a certain patience. And so I say all of that to say, though, that when you recognize artistic and creative ability in your kids, like it is something to nurture. The same way that athletic ability is, the same way that academic ability is. And it does have the same ability to be made into something stable. I was able to make a career out of the arts because I was taught how to be stable. And I think that's the thing that people don't understand. It's not the career field that makes you stable, it's you. So whether I was going to be, and also success is very subjective. You know, I think some people think success is having a steady job and a 401k and having retirement, right? I think it's fair to say that my generation and those after mine, that's shifted a bit. You know, success is more so like you living on your own terms and you deciding what feeds you and what fuels you. And I really, truly believe if we lived in a world where people got to do work that they wanted to do, not work that they had to do, it'd be a very different place. But especially, you know, my mom was a unique case because all of my uncles were very artistic, even though they're like, one of them is an OBGYN, one of them is a judge, one of them is a finance person. Like, they all were in bands when they were 15. Like, they all are like amazing musicians. And so my mom had a respect for like dedication to the arts and not looking at it like, oh, it's just something they're just playing in the garage. You know, like, no, like when my uncle had a band, it was called Minimum Wage. And they had like a banner up in the garage and they would have rehearsal in the garage. And like, she would come and stand with her coffee, like, wow, they're really killing it. You know what I mean? So I just say to any parents watching, just pay attention to not what you would do, but what your kids are doing. And that can be really difficult because we only have like our experiences oftentimes to measure. But that's why, like, my mom says to me all the time that she learned so much from having to step outside of herself in order to meet like the uniqueness of my interests. So like, that's, you know, that can be hard for us.
To all my movers, if you love educational and inspirational content just like this, please like, comment, and subscribe to this channel. But most important, if you know anybody making power moves just like you, share it. Now back to the video. No, I think you raised so many great points there. And I would encourage, and I try to do this as often as I can on this platform. So many people are not living their life purpose because they don't get the support from those who should be their number one supporters, whether it's their parents, it's their spouse, it's their friends and colleagues. And for that reason, they live these lives that, yes, it pays the bills, but it's not what burns inside of them and sets their soul on fire. So I'm so happy to hear these types of stories where a parent would take interest in their young child and nurture them. Whether it's the arts, it's academia, athleticism, whatever it might be. I truly believe if you had that support, you are more likely to excel in whatever that you choose to go into.
You're taught doubt. You know, like, I feel like you're taught that. When you're a kid, you're like, yeah, I could do that.
Yep. Yep.
Like, there's this video of this kid and his father is taping him and he's like, come down the stairs with the cape. And the kid like jumps the whole staircase with the cape. And the father was like, yeah, you don't need to ever do that again. Don't let that cape soup you up. That wasn't safe. Right? Now, in that moment, that's the father like teaching him like that right there is something you should be scared of. And I'm teaching you that fear. But that kid with the cape is so many of us when we're trying different things as a kid, right? Like we just put on the ice skates. Okay, let's see if I can ice skate. Like we can do all these things. And I just think that there's the fear that gets impressed in us is oftentimes more so like just worry, you know, to keep us safe. But it can get translated as a kid without the right context. It gets translated as like doubt and fear of failure. And I think I was taught early on just to be like fearless with risk. And I don't know if my mom like did that on purpose or not, but like I just be trying shit. I just, you know, and like I people have said to me before, like, you know, you really like are kind of fearless with that. And I think it's not that I'm fearless. I just know that I'll have another idea.
Yeah, but I'm going to tell you something, Amanda, and this is something that I want to get to later in this conversation. You just nailed one of my questions. You really are fearless. And I know you're thinking of it like, I'll just have another idea. Many people, millions of people have a quote unquote, another idea, and they never act on them for fear of what others think, of failing, taking a public L. And what I love so much about your story and your career is you just put it out there. You go and you open yourself up to criticism and open yourself up to being judged and open yourself up to people taking shots. But somewhere in that mix, you've had a lot of hits. A lot of things have worked. You've thrown different things at the wall. Not all are going to stick, but many of them have stuck. But I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves because
I just had a situation like that where something I thought was going to stick didn't stick, and it was
so let's go there. Let's go there for a second.
So in the pandemic, I was like, all right, I'm going to create a social networking app. So I created this thing called SFB Society, and it's the first time I've really actually put money. Like I bet on myself a lot of times. It was the first time I put money down on myself, right? Because like to create an app, you have to pay for them to build the app, right? And so in building this app, we were going to also create a lot of like unique content and video content. And so that led us down a road to kind of relaunching the Smart, Funny, and Black YouTube page. And I have these characters that I've been developing for years because I used to do different web series. And by the way, like, I have had hits in the recent years, like my podcast is a hit and I'm fortunate for that. And like Smart, Funny, and Black has been a hit and my special. So like I'm on Insecure. So like these things, you know, but prior to that, I was making shit all the time that like 5 people saw, right? And so I have a lot of like material from that time that is still fresh because only 5 people saw it. So it's like, I still have these characters. So I had this bright idea, like, I'm gonna bring these characters back. We're gonna do sketches and we're gonna do commentary. It's gonna be on Smart Funny and Black YouTube, and it's just gonna be popping. People are gonna love it. Yeah, no. It was still 5 people watching. And I'm just like, but how? I have 1.7 million followers on Instagram, like, and now people know my name. How is there only 1,000 views? How is this possible? But it was just like, I gave it 5 months and I had to chalk it. And so now we're reimagining. So now we like, okay, scorch the earth. Let's come up with something new. And that is the thing a lot of people are actually afraid of. It's not that they're afraid of afraid of failure. A lot of people are afraid of admitting the failure to themselves because they don't think they'll be able to get past it. They don't think they'll be able to get over the disappointment. And I gotta tell you, like, I've had way more ideas that I thought were dope that didn't garner the results that I thought they would than I have in contrast. But what I will say is I've gotten really good at understanding that there's no such thing as failure. Like,
there truly is no such thing as failure.
You learn.
Exactly, unless you don't get back on the horse and try again. Now, if you take an L and decide, I'm never going to do this again and I'm going to walk the other way, and I've been a dreamer my whole life and let me just go do something that is guaranteed, that's failure. But if you continue to move forward,
a
life lesson, it's valuable experience. It is a master's class. It is, you just got a degree in how not to do it. So I don't understand the concept of when people look at just because something didn't work out. And I'm sure even in your case, you put all of this money into your new venture. There are lessons that you learned,
absolutely,
even though it didn't work out for you. But I don't want to get too far. I want to go backwards for a second.
Okay.
You're here in New York.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of get your career going in the most minute way, but you're starting to get out there. You're a VJ, you're a talking head, working for Viacom, making minimal dollars on shows like Best Week Ever. You have a stint over at Sirius. Mm-hmm. How did you even get into those buildings to begin with?
I've always been very tenacious and backed it up with talent. And that's been like a positive, and like, it's kind of like a gift and a curse, right? Because some people are really incredible marketers. Mm-hmm. Like I've had to become really good at marketing. But in the beginning, I had all the talent, but I did not know how to market myself. And it used to frustrate me so much because I would see other people who I knew just weren't really doing anything, but they were so good at making it look like they're doing something.
Welcome to the music industry. Welcome to
that was the music industry. Like, I just was like, but I know that this is not, this is bullshit, but they put a little twinkle and sprinkle a little glitter on it, and folks look like they really out here. And it used to drive me crazy because I really am an authentic artist. And I'd be like, that's why I had to give up music, because I realized, like, oh, what I actually value has no value in this space, like, in a real way. Like, me being like a consummate lyricist, and really caring about the au revoir of work and really trying to create and arrange. Folks is like, yeah, but what's your story? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I'm like, what the fuck are we talking about my story for? Did you hear that song? That was a good song. And it's like, oh yeah, but who do you work with? Who's your producer? Like, all these things that ultimately it's like, you either like the song or you don't like the song, which is what I love about comedy. There's none of that in comedy. Comedy is, are you funny? That's it. Are you funny or not? So what I started, what tipped it all off was really, I was doing spoken word. Mm-hmm. I was doing spoken word, and one night I was at the Nuyorican Poets Cafe in New York, and I ran into Caduce, who was a host on TRL, and he was there at just randomly at the show, and I went up to him, and nobody knew me, but I went up to him and I was like, hey, so you're on MTV and I need to be on MTV, so we need to stay in touch. Like, there's moments like that where I'm like, who do you think you are? But nonetheless, it got said. So, and he responded in kind, and he was like, all right. And so for the next 2.5 years, like, we would touch base. And over that time, he tried to get me like interviews, and every time it would fall through. And then one particular time I was, it was the release of College Dropout. And I had interviewed Kanye at Sirius. And the way that I got into the Sirius satellite radio building was, again, spoken word. Like, I was doing spoken word, and I was at a show, and one of the program directors like was at the show. And he asked me to come down there for an interview. And I thought it was going to be an interview, like, because I'm a poet. Mm-hmm. But it was a job interview.
Oh, wow.
So we do the whole interview. Like, he did this interview with me on air, and then was like, so that was a job interview. I'd really love for you to like have a show here at Sirius. And I was like, what are you talking about? So, but I say all that to say, when I say tenacious and the talent to back it up, it's like, I could have showed up there for that interview and completely like been not impressive, but I went in there proud of the work I'm doing and had a really like clear, distinct tone when I was having that interview. And that is what let him know that I would be good on air. And then when I went to see College Dropout, I ran into Caduce. And I had made this whole big deal that I needed to be in VIP that night. I don't know why. I don't know. Like, I was like, I cannot be in the pit. And I had to go through so many hoops, Prez, to get into VIP that night. I had to wait outside the Fallon show, the Tonight Show. They were like, we're going to be in a black Escalade. I'm like, all right, cool. I come outside. It's like 32 degrees. There's 17 Escalades. And I'm just like, damn it, how am I? Like, it was just foolery. But I made it to the show. I was in VIP, and I ran into Caduce. So, and he was like, oh shit, they're hiring. I'm going to get you an interview. And I had the job in 2 weeks.
Oh my goodness.
And that was one of those times though, where like, he could have got me the interview, but if I went in there and I didn't really know my stuff, it wouldn't have mattered. And what do they say? Luck is when opportunity meets preparation.
Absolutely. And that's exactly, you're touching on so many great points here. But again, and I got to point this out, that fearlessness. People.
You know what though, Prez? It's like, it's fearlessness, but it's also like, I don't bet on nobody but myself. So it's like, as much as it's fearlessness, it's also like a necessity. Like, cause I know that ain't nobody else gonna get it for me. Right. Mm-hmm. Like, I remember when I first moved to LA and I was like hanging out with this chick who, a friend of mine was like, oh, she's an actress, so y'all should hang out, so that you can network and get to know each other. And we like got up for lunch, and she was like, yeah, I forgot. I think I was telling her that I had just gotten an audition, and she was like, oh, my agent never calls me. And that was so different, because it was like, no, I got myself the audition. Like, she was like, my agent never calls me. And it's like, why are you waiting for somebody to call you?
But that's the point I'm trying to make, because earlier in the conversation, you were talking about how you're doing the spoken word and Caduce is in the building, and you go and introduce yourself to him. Do you know how many people would see somebody of that stature and just be afraid? They would just be, well, I'll wait. We'll meet at a different time. But really taking the bull by the horns, manning up, womaning up in your case, and saying, let me just go and introduce myself to, and say, I need to be on MTV.
Let's say, what's the worst that happen?
Exactly. That is like, the point.
But everyone's so afraid of being embarrassed. And it's like, who the fuck is this person for you to be embarrassed by? Like, I mean, ultimately, that's what I feel like it's not even a fearlessness. It's like, it takes a lot to embarrass me. It takes a lot because I don't really, in order for me to be embarrassed, I must hold this person like in like a higher esteem. And for all intents and purposes, you got to be like Felicia Rashad for me to be, you know what I'm saying? Like you got to be levels. And I just feel like a lot of us just give everybody else so much power over our security, like like having food in your teeth and you're like, oh my God. And it's like, everybody gets food in their teeth. Like, I mean, it's not the end of the world, but there's like this perfection that we want everybody to believe that we're existing in. And so people oftentimes don't do that. They don't take that extra leap because they don't want to not be perfect. They don't want to not be presented. And I think a lot of folks feel like I didn't get to prepare. And I will say, like, I am somebody who is really good off the top. Like I kind of have a knack for quick thinking. So, wherever that conversation was going to go, I know that I would have been able to handle. And so some people don't feel comfortable with that. And that's fair, but then the way you work around that is you're like, hi, I would love if we can like meet at another point. Right? Like, it's like, I just want to introduce myself. Here's my card. If there's any way possible, I'd love for us to set time to meet because I feel like, we can connect. And the worst thing they can say is, I'm not interested.
It's the worst.
And like, if you're shattered by that, then this isn't the business for you.
No,
but
right.
And let me tell you shit. Like, I always laugh because when they tell you like, be careful of who you step on the way up because you will see them on the way down. Like, motherfuckers, people think that where they are is where they're always going to be. They also don't think anybody else is going to join them there. It's as if they think that because they have met their aspirations that nobody else had aspirations that they can achieve. And so it's always like this hilarious moment of shock when people realize that you made it and you're like right there. And they're like, hello. I remember this writer that I had met and was introduced to. He asked me to take him off of my email list. And I was so bothered by it because it was just like, is it that deep? Like, that you have to write me a whole, like, I'm just trying to make it, right? And fast forward and like 2.5 years later, we was all in the elevator together. And he was being introduced to me by someone else. And they were like, oh, do you know? Da-da-da-da-da? And I was like, oh yeah. This the nigga that asked me to take him off my email list 2 years ago. And then he was like, and we were just in the elevator. And we just had to stand in that elevator. And I was like, yeah, but I'm here though.
Did he remember that?
People never remember the fuck shit that they do because they're just out here wheeling and dealing it. And then they don't realize, but it was the way he had done it. Like, of course, it's not that big a deal, but he had made a point of writing like this whole thing. And I was like, you could have just pressed unsubscribe. You didn't need to write me an entire opus. But I say all that to say, we're cool now. But, when people ask me for advice, like in this business, I'm like, just don't be an asshole. And I know some people would be like, well, why didn't you take that advice to me? I know you're an asshole. And it's like, I'm difficult. I'm not an asshole. And I'm difficult because it is so easy to just walk over everybody in this business. Like, that's become the norm. And if you don't let people walk over you, then you're considered difficult. So I just own it. Because you ain't walking over me.
And you're dropping so many gems here. I want to touch, you're in the music industry, you're doing your thing. At some point you get fed up with it. Why go back to LA? Did you have larger, because I keep hearing you talking about auditions, you're talking about writers, all of that stuff. Why relocate? And what year did you go back to LA?
So I went back to LA September 5th, 2015. Mm-hmm. And I had just done everything I could do in New York.
Simple as that.
It was like when you're in a relationship and you just look to the right and you're like, oh, we're done.
Was it difficult for you to walk away from the music industry?
No, because it was the same energy as New York, where it was like, we're done. Like it just, and I knew I had given everything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I didn't get pushed out of New York. I didn't get pushed out of the music industry. I evolved out. For me, you know, like I just kind of evolved into I metamorphosized into a different person that required a different space. And it just got to a point where hip hop had shifted so significantly from the music that I loved, and the business had also become more important than the music. And that just felt, for lack of a better word, yucky. And it was like, damn, like, I don't even want to listen to the music no more. And that's scary. Like that scared me.
No,
And
I know the feeling. You're preaching to the choir.
and it was like a real, like, because I love hip hop. Like anybody who knows me, like that's what this whole painting is about. And it was like really jarring to me to feel that way about like a music and a culture that I felt had given me an identity when I was, you know, coming into my own as an adult. And so it wasn't that it was hard to walk away as much as it was kind of, it was like a no man's land for a minute. You know, you're just kind of walking through the desert trying to figure out what's the next space you're going to land in. You knew you had to leave where you were, but you don't know where you're going. And so I remember me and like Pusha is a good friend of mine. And I just remember always telling him like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know. He's like, you're going to figure it out, Dave. You're going to figure it out, you know? And I just remember trying to figure out like, what am I? Like, am I a humorist? And like, people always want to give you a label. And, you know, I remember people telling me, well, it's kind of like you do everything, but like, that's kind of like nothing. Mm-hmm. And all of these things. And then ultimately what I realized was that from doing Best Week Ever and being around a lot of comics, I had like expanded into where I wanted to like get my creative rocks off. And I knew that I needed to do comedy because the people whose careers I really admired, they were all comics. And I really started doing stand-up because I knew that it was like a missing link to what I wanted to.
But was the stand-up in LA? Did you feel you needed
No, so I started doing stand-up in New York.
Okay.
I started doing stand-up in New York in 2013, in November 2013. And I basically this girl was doing a show and she just reached out and was like, hey, you know, I'd love for you to be on our show. And I had never done stand-up before. And she was like, you know, but she see me on Best Week Ever and these, you know, all these different stuff. And so she thought I was like a seasoned stand-up and was like, you know, you're going to be the headliner. And I was like, pump your brakes. Let's pump it. I am not going to headline because I have never done this before. I didn't tell her that, but I was just like, yeah, like I'm just not going to be able to headline, but put me in on the lineup. And I did a good job. Like I really, you know, kind of was able to pull it out, and I just started doing stand-up. And then in 2014, I started going to LA every other month. And this was because I had went out there for I got a screen test for something, and I went out there. Mm-hmm. And I realized that I got more done in a week in LA than I felt I had accomplished in a year in New York. And listen, for some, like that may have just been because it was a new place and it's a new space, but whatever the case, it gave me a new energy. And New York had made me so angry. And I just started like the grind of New York had really gotten to me. And like at one point I found myself like in the rain in front of my building about to fight a cab driver. And I was like, you know what? It's time to go.
But I asked you this line of questions because for my audience, the people who listen to this podcast or watch it on YouTube, they are all aspiring to either be entrepreneurs or to be high-level executives within their company, but they're all forward thinkers. you touch on great points, and I want my audience to really pay attention. Life, it's a natural cycle of life that seasons change.
Yeah.
What may have been prosperous for you at one point in your journey, it's not meant to be forever for everybody.
Yep.
Sometimes you get what you're supposed to get out of that season, and that is all it's supposed to be. And you have to embrace the end. It's no longer,
and pivot.
in your case, what'd you say?
And pivot.
And pivot. Yes, in your case, you said, I've done all I can do in New York. Now, I'm sure when you came to New York, you probably thought I'd be here forever. You probably thought that you'd be in the music industry forever.
Forever.
And you got all that you were supposed to get out of it. And then it was, you know what? Let me make a pivot. Because this chapter is done. Let me embrace my next chapter in my life.
But one tip I'll give folks is every pivot I've made, I've always been able to utilize the space I was to get to the space I'm going.
But that is the point that I always trust the process. I don't know where you're about to go with this, but it is trust the process. Everything that you have been through, it is not wasted time. It is not wasted experiences. It will come into play somewhere in your journey again that you will look back and say, if not for that, I could never do what I'm doing now effectively. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I mean that, but I also mean that in even a more tangible way. In the fact that, like, for instance, when I created my own major at school, I could have created my own major, which would have set me a year back. The reason I was able to graduate on time was because I had done a whole year of courses, and I created a new major that allowed me to use that year of courses. And that required just an extra step of creativity. I could have just had a Black Studies major, and all those 32 credits of acting would have been down the drain. Now, of course, to your point, it wouldn't have been a waste completely, because that experience, that time, those people that I met, like, that all would come into play in the future. But there was a whole other extra level of usefulness that happened with that, because by just adding a concentration in the visual and performing arts, I was able to justify having all 32 credits that I had taken that first year count towards my new major. And that was what helped me be able to pivot and go into this new major, not starting from scratch. So I was already ahead of the game. I graduated on time. So when I came to Cali, I didn't just come to Cali, like, I didn't just drop everything and was like, I'm in California. Like, it wasn't one of those movies. Because how can I do this strategically? And as an adult, you have to think that way. Like, when we're younger, it's definitely a lot more freewheeling, but I moved to Cali when I was 34. Like, I'm a grown person. So what I did was I woke up one morning. I can tell you the day. I woke up on July 5th, 2014, and was like, I don't know where my next check is coming from. I have no idea where my next check is coming from. Because anyone who's out here that's a freelancer, you know what that's like. Like, you be in a rhythm, and then you like, wait, I forgot to keep the rhythm going. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna email some folks. So I just kind of emailed a couple people that I knew, like, to just kind of check the temperature on if they had anything they were looking for. And one of them was this woman, Shawn Saxon Parrish, who was a producer in digital production at digital development at BET. And I had met her a couple times, and we had a rapport, and she had come to some of my one-woman shows. And long story short, I had to, like, really go in there and come up with some ideas to present to her. And she liked one of them. She was like, okay, we'll do like a little pilot, whatever. It was like a little web series. We did one. She was like, okay, let's do a couple more. We did 4 more. And then fearless Amanda walked into her office and was like, okay, so check this out. I really feel like I need to level my life up. And I feel like LA is the only way I'm going to do that. And the only way for me to get to LA is to have a consistent check. And if we pick up this show, if you pick up this show, it would give me the opportunity to change my life. And she was like, well, I want to be a part of your success. So I'll pick the show up.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Now, was this a network show? Like, sorry, the dog brought a stick in the house. Was this a network show? Like, was this some big deal? No. But it was my means to a new space. And it allowed me to have a consistent check every week, which for an artist is the goal at a certain point. Like, you want to know that every week there's going to be something coming in. And that consistency went even a step further because she then allowed me to change the format of the show so that I could do it in LA. So when I came out here, the first 3 months I was here, I had a job that I had created. So I just say that to say, like, yes, you need to pivot. Yes, you have to know when it's time for things to dissolve and to elevate other spaces. But it doesn't mean that you have to just completely burn the bridge and cut, because there's usually some resources that you put in time to build that can bring you to the next space.
Such a great story. Such a great story. And I think your story even gets greater right around this time because you go to LA in 2015. You leave New York. Mm-hmm. Do I have my timeline correct that by 2016, you get the Insecure job?
Yeah. So April 2016, I booked Insecure. It premiered in October. And then the next season, they upgraded me to series regular. So in LA has a lot of language, honey, a lot of lingo for the business. So there's like reoccurring guest star, then there's series regular, and it's a big difference because series regular is when you get a credit. You also, the biggest thing is that once you're a series regular, no matter how many episodes you're in, you're paid for those episodes. So that's the biggest difference. If there's 10 episodes shot for the season and you're only in 3 of them, you get 10 episodes of money. Mm-hmm. And so it's a life changer for a lot of us as performers to get a series regular job. And so in 2017, I made a series regular. And at the same time, and this is the other tip, if you don't notice, or if you forgot, let me reiterate. Never forget working on your own stuff, even when you are doing somebody else's work. And we oftentimes make other people's dream our focus. And we think, well, as long as I put everything into their thing, then it's going to advance mine. And it's like, for some people, yes. But then there's other people who it's like, you have your own creative space. Do not abandon that space. So I've had to make it clear to people when I'm on Issa's set, Issa's the boss. So that's why when people would be like, oh, your co-workers don't like you and da-da-da. I'm like, y'all don't even understand. I don't even care if they don't like me. I'm over here at work. Y'all are not understanding what the dynamics of this is. Like, we aren't here at work on some oh, do we like each other? We're here doing a job. And I know my role. And so when I come from there to Smart, Funny, and Black, I'm in leadership and I know my role over there. And it was always important to me because this was a lesson I had to learn the hard way. It became incredibly important to me to make sure that just as much work as I was putting in on Issa's show, I need to be putting into my own show, my own stuff. You have to do that. And it can be hard to do because sometimes it's very time consuming, but at the end of the day, that gig is going to end.
I love that. That is, oh my goodness. That is so.
How many of us have been in jobs, Prez, where you think everything is cool? And then they're like, yeah, so we decided to shift gears and we're going to be cutting all y'all. So it's been real.
And I'm going to tell you this, for anybody who is not, I'm definitely making a segment out of this, but it might not even be that they shifted gears. It might not be that they liked you, didn't like you. We're living in a pandemic. You don't know what can happen at any given. Nobody planned for this. No one. So if you were putting all of your eggs in someone else's basket, you left none for yourself. And so often you get caught off guard because you don't have anything in your reserve. You put so much time, energy, and effort somewhere else, you forgot to take care of the number one, which is yourself. So great points you just made. I love it. At this point, I got to believe you're riding high. Your shift, trusting the process by shifting and going ahead into LA, it's working out great for you. You're still doing your comedy thing. Because your career continues to blossom at this point. And I was so proud of you and I might be skipping the timeline here because I don't know if The Real came first or the HBO comedy special comes first. But
The Real was last year.
Was last year. So I want to focus specifically on the comedy special for a second. Because as a comic, that's everybody's dream. That's Mount Olympus. I get a 1-hour comedy special on HBO. Huge. How did that come to be? And if you don't mind, and I'm not a comedian, but I just recently watched and I believe it was on HBO. HBO or Showtime. I'm not sure which one it was, but it was a limited series where they talked about the Comedy Store. Did you ever have the opportunity to perform at the Comedy Store or legendary venues like Caroline's? And what was that like? And how did it prepare you for your big debut on HBO?
Bro, Mad Mud. Stand-up for me was a different route than it was for a lot of people because by the time I got to stand-up, I knew my voice. A lot of people start stand-up when they're substantially younger. So they're doing a lot of learning, a lot more like learning and shifting of gears than I was doing. By the time I made it to stand-up. So my kind of route was a lot faster than a lot of folks because of that reason. And I think, there's some folks who might feel like, oh, that's unfair, but whatever, fuck them. At the end of the day, like I was doing comedy in a lot of non-comedy spaces for a long time. So that by the time I started doing stand-up, I was developed. And so when I was in New York, there's a path. You do open mics, and then you try and just kind of get put up on shows, and you have to hang out at places and hope that someone doesn't show up so that you can get a spot, and then you make friends with other comics who have shows, and try and get them to put you up and give you a spot, and it's a process. And I always say you can't skip steps, but you can speed them up. And because not everybody needs the same amount of time at different phases. Like, I didn't need to do open mics for 4 years. I did open mics for 4 weeks. And I was like, oh, okay, I've had enough of listening to white boys say a bunch of racist shit and think it's funny. So, scene. And I went forth just with this mindset of like, I'm going to prove to these people, because a lot of folks felt like I was just doing stand-up because I was a known name in other spaces. And now I was trying to just kind of add something. And it was like, no, this is a craft. And like everything else I do, I want to learn the craft of comedy. And I was obsessed with comedy since a kid. So it wasn't, to their surprise, like this wasn't just some like new shiny novelty thing. This was something that I had always respected so much. That's why I didn't just take it lightly to get in there. But long story short, when I came to California, the thing about stand-up is it's a real family in a way that hip hop doesn't operate. I feel like with comedy, like people look out, like your people look out for you.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like in hip hop, it never felt like that. It always felt more so like every man for themselves. And it's not to say that that isn't the case for others, but that was like, it wasn't my experience. I didn't feel like in hip hop, like there was folks who were as willing to be like, hey, over here, they have da 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 da. More so people are like, oh, shh, don't tell nobody because I want to get it for myself. Like that's more so the vibe. And in stand up, it was like, I moved to LA and my homegirl, Sam J, shout out to Sam J, who just got her own show on HBO. She was like, oh, I know the booker at the Improv. They're opening a new room. I'm gonna introduce you to them so you could maybe get a show over there. She didn't have to do that. Like, and by me having my own show at the Improv when I got here, it became a tool of currency for me to get other spots. Because now you can barter. Hey, I'll put you on my show at the Improv if you put me on your show at the Virgo, at the Virgil. I'll put you on my show if you put me on your show at the Comedy Store. And so having that was like a priceless like asset. And I just built from there. And for what it's worth, if you funny, people fuck with you, period. Like, cause they like, oh, okay, you funny. So we could be funny together. Great. And the long and short of how I got my special was because Jesse Collins, who produces, BET Awards and Soul Train Awards, and he produced the New Edition movie on BET, and that special that I think is amazing at Netflix, 2020 is Trash. Jesse Collins and I had met at a event at my agency, and we just hit it off, like on some like homie, laughing at the same jokes type shit. And we just stayed cool. And that's the other thing. Like when I make connections with people, I make real connections with them. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like there's some people that you're just like industry acquaintances, you see them out, you say hi, but there's other people you're like, oh nah, we on the same vibration. Mm-hmm. So he was in a meeting at HBO. And they were talking about a bunch of other people, and he took it upon himself to be like, I don't know why you telling me about all these people. You need to be looking at Amanda Seales. That was Thanksgiving 2018. I was shooting my special Thanksgiving 2019. Now, it's not to say that they just were like, oh, perfect. Like I still had to work my ass off. I had to sell out, 7 shows at Caroline's, and they came to the shows at Caroline's and they were like, oh my gosh, we've never seen a standing ovation in the middle of a show. Like I had to really impress and stay consistent. And to your Shawn Prez, Amanda is Fearless, Nina Rosenstein, the head of specials at HBO, she came to Smart, Funny, and Black when we were doing a show out there at the New York Comedy Festival. And she's like, Amanda, how are you? It's great to meet you. And I was like, Nina Rosenstein, the woman who will not give me my special. And she was like, Amanda, what are you talking about? That's not it at all. And I was like, well, y'all just keep jibber jabbering and won't make a date, won't send an offer. So what are we even doing? I was like, I don't want to keep having conversations. Y'all either going to give me the special or no. Next week I had an offer.
Oh my God, that's beautiful.
Actually, no, next day. Next day I had an offer. Next day.
Wow.
But the other thing is this, and I want to just say this to folks, because I know that there's some people that look at me and they're like, she's too much. Da-da-da-da. That's your opinion, and that's fine. But there's other folks that when they see somebody who can back it up, they're inspired by that. They see that as insurance because they know, okay, she's not talk. Like the woman came and saw me at my own sold out shows. So I'm not just talking on my ass. Like you here at my sold out shows. So in those moments, it's not that you're being pushy, and you're also not asking for them to want you. You're just stating what you deserve. And I've always felt like we get talked out of doing that. Like you can state what you deserve. It doesn't mean you got to be rude about it. It doesn't mean you got to be stank. It doesn't mean you got to burn a bridge, but you can just state like, this is how I feel about what I deserve. Take it or leave it. Because if she hadn't given me the special, I was going to figure out how to do it regardless.
Yeah, but that comes down to a fundamental belief in self. in understanding your own worth. And I think that far too often, especially in the industry that we're in, any area of entertainment, people look at it as they're too busy looking for validation from someone else when they should be looking, okay, maybe you don't see my worth, but I know who I am and what I'm capable of. And even if that means me taking a little longer to get to the finish line,
Yes,
investing a little bit of my money, I'm still going to get there. I'm not looking for a handout. I'm happy if somebody validates me, but that is not ultimately what is going to decide if I ever arrive at that finish line. I'm getting there one way or the other.
You know what I think about often? In like 2000 and I want to say maybe like 5 or 6, I was emailing. Well, this is the days of the sidekicks. So it was like I was two-waying back and forth with Hove about an interview. And I said, one day you're going to hire me. And I think about this so often because I'm like, you corny ass. Like, because now I think back, I'm like, fuck out of here. I don't need you to hire me, nigga. Like, and you know, like, but that at that time, that was the ceiling of my dream, right? Like, and over time, I cut through that ceiling and I broke through that ceiling and I had new aspirations. And that was as my self-worth and my self-empowerment grew, I created new spaces of ambition that I wanted to step into. But ultimately, and I talk about this in my book, Small Doses, Potent Truths for Everyday Use, now available on Audible as well. You know, like there's your market value and your self-worth. And sometimes the two aren't the same. Like when I first moved to LA, my self-worth was up here and my market value was about here. I knew that I was at the level of all these folks out here, but my work only showed that I was right here. And so I had to make a conscious effort and decision to get work that would elevate my market value to my level of self-worth. So you can be an amazing actor, but if you're only doing reality shows, nobody knows that you're an amazing actor. You don't have the credits. You don't have the proof. You don't have the market value. You can be an incredible A&R, but if you only keep doing safe projects that don't really go nowhere or that are just kind of like basic, ain't nobody gonna know that you got some like dope ass visionary skills about you. But a lot of us don't see that. We just feel like everybody's supposed to see what we have within ourselves, even though we haven't demonstrated it. So I had to like really swallow a pill when I first moved here and understand like, it don't matter how much work you did in New York. These people don't care.
You know, you got a dope quote, and I actually wrote it down, and I'm gonna read it because it goes to exactly what you just said. I was gonna bring it up, and even as you know, we come to the end of this because I don't know how much time you have, but I was gonna get it in, and I think it fits right at this point. You said, "I did a lot of work that was important to me, but it didn't elevate my market value." That's a gem within itself. Because yes, we can go out there as individuals and we can do so much work that's important to us. But there's a big difference between what's important to you and the work that actually elevates your market value and is important to the masses. And I like the way you just put it and just broke it down because you took this quote that you said and you really elaborated on it in a way that I think people need to hear. They need to understand that there's a big difference between just doing work that might be important to you, but it's not necessarily going to position you in the market and have people looking at you as this is a commodity we should be investing in.
And if you have an agent or a manager or a PR person, they need to be able to know that and guide you in that. And that's a really important way of knowing if you have somebody in that position who is doing their job properly. Are they able to identify where you are, where you want to go, and what needs to be done to get there? Because I've had all the above, the PR, the agents, the managers, and many times they couldn't. Like, they have their contacts, and so they're like, I'm just going to try and plug you into my stuff. But a lot of times they're not able to really be the visionary of like, okay, this is your unique route that you need to take. And so oftentimes, like, I feel like, and it's a very music industry thing, but a lot of performers like want this manager who's going to come and save them. Like, they're going to come and Harriet Tubman them to freedom. It's not real. I don't care who you are. I have never heard of an artist who got there solely because their manager figured it out for them. You have to be the visionary of your dream. Your manager works for you, your agent works for you, your publicist works for you. Doesn't mean you demean them, it doesn't mean you talk down to them, but they work for you.
Well said. So well said. I think I know the answer to this, obviously. And I just want to keep going in chronological order of your career. You've had so many breakout moments, call it that. But hosting the BET Awards, huge moment. You mentioned Jesse Collins, who was such a blessing in your life, or has been such a blessing in your life. Is that how hosting the BET Awards came into fruition for you?
He literally called me like on FaceTime. I was like, hey, you want to host BET Awards? I was like, wait, what? I'm about to do an interview. Let me call you right back. But that's our rapport, you know? And when people tell you like, it's not what you know, it's who you know, what it really is it's who knows what you do. So what I mean by that is you can know everybody. If they don't know that you nice with it like that, if they don't know that they can rely on you, if they don't know like the scope of your capabilities, then all they are just people in your call list. The people I know what I do, so that when they're in spaces, they're able to go through their, oh, Amanda's right for this. I found out that Jesse had been fighting for me to host that shit for a year. And when I talked to Jesse and thanked him, he was like, well, never forget, when you got your special, you hired us to produce it. He was like, you know how many people I put on that don't never do that? Like, but it never occurred to me not to do that. Like that just seemed like part and parcel. He was like, nah, like people don't operate that way out here. And so, you know, it's not just who you know, it's who knows what you do. I had a friend who was out here for 10 years. But at the time I got here, she lived here for 10 years. I surpassed her in 2 years in terms of credits and the level of credits, et cetera, solely because the people that I knew understood my goals, and they understood my gifts, and they understood how they could be helpful to them.
Damn, this is a great point. And I want to make sure I got this quote right, because, and I'm letting you know I'm going to run with it. I'm going to give you a credit on it, but I will be running with it. It's not just who you know, but it's who knows what you do.
Yes.
Powerful. That is powerful.
She knew all these people. Real. She knew all these people, and these people didn't know that she could sing. They didn't know she could dance. You know, they didn't know that she's hilarious. They had just seen her in some bit roles, and that was all she kept it to. Let me tell you something. Before I left New York, I managed to get meetings with the executives of like BET, Bravo, VH1, MTV, because I had worked in their buildings before. So I was able to like, you know, kind of get my way into having a meeting with the heads of these various departments that do hiring. My sole purpose was because it dawned on me, these people only know that I can read a prompter. They don't know that I'm a writer. They don't know that I'm a comedian. They don't know that I can sing, that I can dance, that I can act. They don't know any of these things. So why would they consider me for any of these things? They have no knowledge of it. And I remember I sat down with one of my bosses and she was like, well, you know, Amanda, I got to tell you, I thought you were just another dumb talent. And I was like, pardon? And she was like, thank you for coming in here and like really like showing me the breadth of your skill. And what I ended up doing shortly after that was I wrote a one-woman show called Death of the Diva. And the sole purpose of that show was to show folks like Amanda Seales is not just a host on TV. Like she actually is like a very multifaceted performer. And it ended up selling out and we ended up going into like the Helen Mills Theater and selling out shows. And I was able to get a lot of people that I had known for years in the industry as just like the, you know, Amanda's the hip hop head and she be hosting shit. These people came and were like, I didn't know you could do all of this. Aha, all right. And that was the beginning of me also reminding myself, don't you ever limit yourself to just this presentation of self, and make sure that you always come in a room and let people know this is the breadth of me. And it's not about overwhelming folks. It's about understanding that like you have these multifacets and they strengthen you, not weaken you. And it's just for a long time, the game wasn't like that. Like people definitely always told you like, you need to just pick one thing and just be about that. And we're not in that world anymore. But I can tell you, yo, like, you got to let people know what you do. They're not going to ask. They're going when people ask what you do, they mean where you working.
No, such great points you're bringing up. I want to pivot for a second because, again, another monumental moment in your career. Being a co-host on The Real. Mm-hmm. Short stint there. But what I really want to focus in for our viewing audience, our listening audience, consuming this on iTunes, Spotify, or the other streaming platforms, can you speak to, because you did something that is admirable, you did something that is so contrary to what many people would even conceive of doing. You were on a major daytime daily show that is watched by millions, and you walked away. Can you speak to not being afraid to walk away from a check and also being true to who you are and trusting that if God blessed you with that opportunity, He's still in the blessing business. He will bless me with another that aligns right with my spirit.
I mean, you just said it. I mean, for what it's worth, I've been in this game a long time and I've worked so that I do have the options. Like people would always ask me like, what's your goal? To have your own TV show? Like, what's your goal? I said, my goal is options. I don't ever want to feel like my back is against the wall. I want to have options. And so in me continuing to develop like spaces like sfbsociety.com, my Smart Funny and Black show, like like creating the viral version of it during the pandemic, continuing to keep relationships with people like Jesse Collins, just not even just keep them, but grow them, you know, like that's a friend now, you know, all of these things have allowed for me to have a certain level of a safety net of knowing that I'm never gonna let myself fall. I'm letting myself fall when I stay in a place that doesn't allow me to keep my integrity and be my authentic self. That's when I'm failing. And that was what that show was. It reached a point where it was like, this is outside of my purpose. And I've been always very in touch with like what works and what's right for me and what's not right for me. And, you know, sometimes we're in scenarios where we just got to stick it out. When I worked at Sirius, I wanted to quit Sirius like every other week. I had a boss there that was just the devil, and I just wanted to quit every other week, and I didn't have options. So I just had to suck it up. It was DJ Self and Q-Tip who would talk me off the ledge every other week about quitting Sirius Satellite Radio. You can't do it, Dave. You can't do it. You got to just stick it out, you know? And it was like, I hate it here. And it's like, yeah, but you know, I'm a legend, but you not. So like, and it took time. But at the Real, my whole excitement about working at the Real was that I felt like I was going to get to be my authentic self and be in a space where I could speak freely and that would be supported. And when that wasn't the case, it was mind-boggling to me. And it was kind of like the last straw of my introduction into Hollywood. And it really threw me. And I had a whole breakdown. I've talked about it on the Breakfast Club. And it wasn't that they were the sole reason why, but they were the tipping point. And, you know, fame is just a real, fame is just a pesky thing, because if you didn't, like, I didn't come into the creative space to get famous. Like, getting famous is a byproduct of the creative space that I came into. And there's no like lessons on it. You just have to manage it and deal with it. And one thing that I will tell you, if you're not also working on your work, but you need to also be working on yourself, because people think that when they get to success, everything is going to be okay. And everything about yourself that you weren't working on while you were putting all your energy into your work, I promise you, will come right to the surface just as your money comes in. Because now you're not distracted by your grind. So before, your abandonment issues or your insecurities, your imposter syndrome, all that stuff that you kind of like tucked away because you were like, I'm gonna make it, I'm gonna make it, I'm gonna make it. And you were a workaholic and you were just, you know, behind the computer and handling shit, whatever. Yeah. Then you made it. All of that stuff comes right to the surface. You were boxing out in the paint before, and now the shit comes right down the line. And it's like, it slaps you in the face. And that happened to me.
Why was it important for you? Because I watched that Breakfast Club interview, and that is a very personal, very sensitive, and again, it goes to fearless Amanda. To be so transparent, I don't know if it was a full-on nervous breakdown or if I don't know what, but you were very transparent that you went through a major low after reaching such an incredible high. And I'm hearing you speak about it even now on this platform. Why is this so important for you to share?
I think because I really have a problem with like the facade that is put on fame and success, and it is really detrimental in particular to, like, I feel, to Black folks in particular, because there's so much that we expect from ourselves that other cultures don't, right? And that expect from our communities. And when we get into these spaces, we are carrying so much more with us in terms of stress and you know, wanting to prove. And we've had to oftentimes go through a lot more levels of blood, sweat, and tears, right? Because you got to work twice as hard to make it even half as far and all that. So by the time we get here, we're so drained. And then we get mad at ourselves because we think, how dare I be exhausted? How dare I feel sad? I made it. I got money, or I got success, I got visibility, I made it. How dare I? And it was important for me to be honest about that, because it's an unfair expectation to think that you will go through all of that and not eventually feel it. It's like, I'm so glad that we are in a world that's now giving like light to postpartum depression. Like, pregnancy is hard as fuck. And then you have a baby, and then you got to like just give everything to the baby. And, you know, there's this beautiful, like glowing, you know, presentation that a lot of people give to pregnancy. And a lot of mothers will tell you this shit damn near killed me. Like, you know what I'm saying? And it's this false facade that, and then people don't feel like they can express their pain, and then they fall prey to their pain. And we shouldn't have to do that. And it doesn't, and you don't got to be a celebrity to be able to do that. I'm just saying, like, abundance doesn't mean that you can't also express like mental health concerns. And we in the Black community have such a stigma around mental health, and we always feel like, not always, but oftentimes there is a stigma that says that, like, you know, if you go to therapy, or if you express pain, you know, or depression, that you have a problem. Like somebody hit me the other day and was like, you can tell she didn't grow up with no father. Listen to how she talks. And it's just like when we do stuff like that and say stuff like that, it's just more so deflection and projection of the fact that we haven't centered mental health as an important aspect to our wellness. We look at success and materialism, but we never really put enough energy into that space. So that's why it was important for me to talk about it too, because, you know, I just want to always be inclusive of, I always want to be authentic. That's always the goal. And I would have been lying if I said, you know, shit is sweet. It wasn't. I mean, Biggie, you know, he wasn't lying. More money, more problems.
No problems. You're absolutely right. But
I do have to skate because I actually have a call with
we're at the close of the interview
about taxes. So no problems. It's for real.
We're at the close of the interview. I applaud you for your openness and candor in that. If I can ask you one last question, and you can make it 1 minute, 30 seconds.
Okay.
Because I think your career encapsulates this. Can you speak to the importance of doing good work at all times? Whether you're being paid $350 to be a talking head on Best Week Ever, or you're being paid whatever it is that HBO paid you to do your comedy special.
I just feel like your reputation precedes you. And oftentimes your work is like your actual calling card. So, you know, for me, I hear people say a lot of times like, yeah, you know, people can say what they want about you, but you always do good work. And I'm like, exactly. Because it takes the subjectivity out of it a lot of times. Like, so it really creates a meritocracy for yourself that doesn't always exist. And I know for me, it's also a part of your brand that is the most important part of your brand. I used to be called Amanda Diva. That used to be my name. And when I changed my name back to Amanda Seales, people were like, you can't change your name too. You can't change your name. That's your brand. That's your brand. And I said, no, my brand is good work.
There you go.
My brand is good work. I could change my name. Prince was a symbol, okay? And he could do that because you were going to rock with what he created if his name was supercalifragilisticexpialidocious or Prince or a symbol. And that's what I know good work to do. Good work stands the test of time. Good work, it precedes you. And it also, at the end of the day, makes you feel good, you know, because now you know what you're putting in. And I've never felt good when I don't feel like I gave it all. I always, you know, I'm like, okay, wait, let me make sure that I really did my best in this space. And that's why I don't take jobs that I don't feel like I'm going to do that with.
Beautiful. Amanda, thanks so much for your time. You know, you always give amazing interviews, and thank you for giving us an incredible, insightful, empowering interview. I think people are going to learn a lot from hearing your story. Where can my audience find you?
You can find me at Amanda Seales on Instagram, and at YouTube, Smart, Funny, and Black, and on Twitter at Amanda Seales.
Amanda, again, thank you so much. Continued blessings and success to you. I love watching your career from afar and seeing all of the good work that you're doing. We didn't get a chance to talk about your activism because that's a whole conversation within itself. But just keep it up. I think it's more important now than ever. And you were doing this long before it was fashionable. You are.
Let him know, Prez.
And that's real talk. Keep it up, girl. You are a true power move maker. Thank you so much.
I'll take it. Thank you. Have a good one. Stay up.
Bye-bye. What's up, guys? Thanks for sticking with me to the end of the video. Truly appreciate you. If you like anything you heard here today, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And if you know anybody that can benefit from this message, feel free to share. Peace and love.